guys ready? 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 All right. At this time, we'll call the May 20th, 24 Planning Board meeting to order. We have quorum, because we have 6 of us here. So if we would, please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. At this point, we'll move on to item 2A, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from the April 15th, 2024 Planning Board meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review them? If so, any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections for Eva? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move they be approved as presented and recommended.
Second. We got a motion and a second. Any other before we vote? Any comments? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on. Motion carries. All right. We are moving into the public hearing section of this. Public hearings are a time for petitioners to present requests and for the public to state their concerns and voice opinions in favor or in opposition to these requests. If you wish to speak, please clearly state your name, address, and whether you are for or against the request for the record, and make sure you have signed in with the clerk. If you do not sign in with the clerk, I will not let you speak, okay? So we will move on to item 4A, rezoning map amendment, REZ 2024-06, 1000 Wagstaff Road. Further information will be provided by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Board. I am submitting the agenda abstract and the supporting documents into the official record of the town. The first item before you tonight is REZ 2024-06, a rezoning initiated by the town at 1000 Wagstaff Road, PIN 0656113144. It's a total of 16.16 acres from the residential agricultural zoning district to the office and institutional zoning district. This request is consistent with the 2040 land use plan. Next, thank you. And staff's recommendation is as follows. Staff recommends approval of the proposed zoning map amendment as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the following reasons. Number 1, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2040 Community Vision Land Use Plan classification of civic and institutional. And number 2, the requested zoning district supports assembly uses such as the existing use of the property. Staff is available to answer any questions.
All right, before we open up the public hearing, anybody have any questions for staff? All right, this time we'll open up the public hearing. Eva, do we have anybody signed up to speak for this case?
Yes, Chair, we do. If Mark Howard, 729 Fleming Loop Road, would please approach the podium. If you please state your name and address for the record. If you would please state your name and
Mark
address.
Howard, 729 Fleming Loop Road, Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina.
Thank you.
And
So-
sir, are you for or against this?
Neither.
Neither, okay.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions that probably would have better been asked at the neighborhood meeting.
Yes, sir.
I didn't get a notification of the neighborhood meeting. So the first notification we got was for the planning board thing. I'm sure the reasons for that were my mother passed away last January in 23, and probably the Wake County records weren't updated at the time the letters went out or whatever it was. But I received this letter for the planning board that was mailed on May the 8th. It was the first idea I had that anything was going on with that piece of property. I'm one of the owners of the adjacent piece of property that has 15 acres.
It's okay, sir. Sir, you got 3 minutes. We got to kind of move it. So if you're going to bring us something, and if you bring us something, are you trying to give us anything, or are you just going to?
No, I'm bringing what you gave me.
Okay. Fair enough. I just want to make sure you weren't.
Yeah, I was just going to identify the tract for you.
Okay.
It's parcel number 0033587, and you see it in the top left-hand corner of your map, which would be the northwest part of that map. It's an L-shaped piece of property that's adjacent to this piece that's up for consideration. So the reason I said I'm neither for nor against it is I really don't know that much about why the piece of property is being zoned or being requested to be zoned for office and institutional, or is that right? Industrial, office and industrial. O&I. I did read all the neighborhood minutes from the meeting that was held and saw some of the questions about it, and So as a family, a member of the family group that owns that, we really don't understand why it looks like the town of Fuquay is the petitioner, not the property owner. Is that a normal process?
Yeah, so here's what we'll do on this, with this board, you can kind of state what it is you need. We can't really get into a Q&A, so what we'll do is we'll kind of ask some questions to staff and get you some answers, what we can get you based off of what we're hearing.
Right.
And then what I'll have you do is if you have further questions, like beyond more, needing more detail than what we can get you, then just contact staff after this, and they should be able to answer all your questions before the town board meeting. But this isn't like a Q&A where you can ask us questions and we can really answer them for you.
Okay, so you'll be taking a vote at this meeting about whether you...
Yeah, we will take a vote for a recommendation to town board, but we will ask questions here. You'll see members writing notes down.
So, I understand that, but if I have questions that would help me,
Then you would need to call planning, and you could call them.
but
at
it'd
any
be
point.
after you voted to recommend it.
That's just what that is, but you'd still have another opportunity to speak at the public hearing for the town board. And the town board is the governing body for their zoning itself. So no matter what we recommend on this board, you would still have an opportunity to speak at town board, and that would be the board at which makes the final decision.
But it would seem that it would, if it went to the town board, it seemed like it would have more weight if it's coming with a recommendation from the planning board. Is that correct?
Yes and no, it could. That's up for interpretation. Town board votes independently of us. We're just a recommendation body, so.
Right, I understand. So I guess, I don't really have anything further to say.
Okay.
I'm just,
We appreciate you getting up, and like I said, if you call staff, I'm sure Pam or Melissa can certainly get you pointed in the right direction and answer any questions you got.
right, so I can't ask any questions to get an answer to that.
Not right now, not in this form.
Okay, thank
No,
you.
sir.
The next person we have on the list to speak during this item is Roger Scott. If you'll please list your name and address, and if you are for or against the item for the record.
Roger Scott, 741 Far Post Drive, Fuquay-Varina. I am against this. So if you look at the screen, the very top of the blue line is actually my house. So I don't understand why they're gonna change. It's all residential through there, why it's gonna change to have industrial and office through that area, especially when it's all neighborhood through that area. So that's how I feel.
Fair enough. I
right.
appreciate your comments.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And the last person we have on the sign-in sheet is Nora Bate. If you'll please approach.
Hi, my name is Nora Bate. I live at 927 Wagstaff Road. I'm kind of catty corner to the church. I'm against this. The reason for that is threefold. One, talking to other neighbors, we've got some concerns about the environmental impact of what they would do. We know that they have before put in front of this board plans to essentially triple the size of their building. So that would impact all of the wetland and all of the properties surrounding them. Secondly, our road is already in ill repair, let's say, and is not rated for the traffic they would likely bring in. So I know that on their previous plans, they've talked about doing basically putting in classrooms for daycare, as well as potentially school children. That would greatly increase the amount of traffic on our road, which we tend to have a lot of accidents anyway because people take the curve too fast. And the third reason is, frankly, they're not great neighbors. And I don't say that lightly. I think we all have a sense of what it's like to be a good neighbor and to have good neighbors. I will tell you that in my house, with all the doors and windows closed, I can hear the music from their services. I've called and left messages on several occasions to ask them to turn that down. That has not happened. They've done things like they previously did some construction, and that construction went on until about 11 o'clock at night. And most recently, they have lit off illegal fireworks in the middle of the night. And it was maybe a week after July 4th. So they had an opportunity to do that if they wanted to do that. So I'm very concerned about how this will affect our community. It's not a super close-knit group, but because of just the layout of the neighborhood, but it is a quiet space. And they have not shown themselves to be interested in interacting with us on a neighborly level. And they've even gone so far, sometimes their gate is locked when they're having services, and so their traffic backs out onto the road. And I don't have a lot of faith that those issues are gonna be resolved by this rezoning. I understand that they don't currently have any plans in front of this board, but given the history of what has transpired, we can have a reasonable expectation that they would want to go through with their previously presented plans. So that kind of sums up what I had in mind, but definitely against this.
We appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have two more.
Okay.
That have just signed up, and we have Owen Williams, if you'll please approach.
Hi, I'm Owen Williams. I live at 920 Wagstaff, just across from the church, and I'm also against this proposal. A lot of the reasons first of all, I agree with what everyone else has just said on all the concerns they have, traffic, noise, but also it's unclear to me why they need to rezone at all. As I understand it, there's a dispute with water, but that seems like a matter between them and Harnett County. I don't see why rezoning to an industrial office is at all necessary or helpful for that. And that's my main concern.
Okay, thank you.
And we have Bree Arthur.
Hello, I'm Bree Arthur, and my husband and I own 7624 and 7628 Troy Stone Drive, and we are against, not necessarily because we don't want a road, but we don't want this rezoning to occur. We have a significant issue with groundwater that not enough people have brought up. We have flooded backyards for nearly half the year, and with more development, I would be extremely concerned that our leach fields simply won't function. The church hasn't been a great neighbor, as has been mentioned. For many years, they ran a gun range that was a firing range that was actually like firing into our section of the woods. It was very disturbing, not peaceful in any way. But my main concern is that we're not taking into consideration the fact that these are very wet properties. We own a half an acre of a woodland swamp that has water in it year-round, whether we're dry or not. And with more impermeable space, our property will get even wetter, which will encroach upon the area in which we use for our recreation and, for our homes so that our bathrooms function. I'm not sure that we all take into consideration that this used to be called Fuquay Springs, and there is a lot of water underground, and that this isn't just surface runoff, this is water coming from underneath. And the more development we do with the lack of consideration of where that spring water is actually going to leach to is really problematic. I would love to be more involved. I'm a professional horticulturalist. I have a lot of experience in this. And having lived now for 14 years on a wetland property, there are a lot of problems that could be mitigated with more responsible development. But I'd be very, very concerned for this to be rezoned, particularly with the idea of having larger institutional buildings that would put more runoff onto our property. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you so much.
We have Ashley Smock, if you'll please approach.
Hey everybody, my name's Ashley. I live directly across the street from the church at 1009 Wagstaff, and my parents live right beside me at 1013 Wagstaff. I am against this as well. Like has been mentioned, the neighborly of this church has been not great. They had a big protest on Easter Sunday, and there was children holding signs out in the road. I had to call the cops 3 times for them to come out and get these kids off of the highway because they're protesting what they're preaching inside this church. I did go inside this church twice as it was being built because I'm a Southern girl and I think it's great to walk across the street with my daughter and hear the word. And I was not welcomed. And I never have gone back over. When they were building, I was growing squash, zucchini, and tomatoes, and I was just overproducing. And I was like, oh, maybe they would like some. So I was like, trying to welcome them into where they were joining, which is where I lived. And they used my water for something. Their hose broke, so they ran a hose across the street, used my water before. I don't know, anything to help them, I'm honestly against it at this point. My husband is also a retired military, and we used to shoot as well across. Before the laws changed, they've changed now to where you can't. You have to have a berm. So this was a year or so ago, and they would call the law on us every time, saying that we were threatening their congregation, and that is not what we do. And then right after they called on us, they opened their gun range behind their house, behind the church. So a lot of stuff has happened over the years. Again, the road is terrible. There's tons of runoffs on the road, so more traffic there is awful. And also they do have a locked gate. I understand some churches do that, but I've never been to a church that had a locked gate. And whoever doesn't approach it first that has a key, they line up the street. And it's just completely unsafe there. As I was a little girl, my uncle had a huge wreck in that road. So I've been around for a long time. My family's been around here a long time. So I really wanted to welcome them, and they just have been nothing but that. So thank you for your time.
We appreciate that.
We have no more signed up, no more
All right,
names.
give everybody one more last chance. If anyone else wants to speak on this, please see Eva. Seeing no one get up, I think we bring it back to the board and close this public hearing. All right. I think one of the things that we probably need to get clarified from staff is a lot of people got up and spoke and said industrial, and I think there needs to be a little bit of a clarification between office and institutional versus office and industrial. So staff, I think it'd be helpful if you could kind of clarify what uses could be done on this.
Right, so, yeah, I'll cover a couple of those questions that were brought up tonight. First of all, it is office and institutional, which is considered a civic use. It is not industrial. So this is something that we feel that our schools, every single one of our Wake County public schools is also in this O&I zoning district. It is also appropriate for a place of worship, which is the technical term for a church property, the use. There are two ways that churches can operate under our permitted uses. One is in a residential zoning district with an approved special use permit that is granted by the Board of Adjustment. Anytime that an addition or modification to that property is desired, then they amend the special use permit, go back to the Board of Adjustment. So there was a special use permit issued on this property a couple years ago when they built an addition, a small addition on the side of the property, and that's how they had been operating. The other way to operate is as in a commercial, a non-residential zoning district permitted by right. So the office and institutional is a permitted use, it is permitted by right for a place of worship. So at this time, there are absolutely no plans submitted to the town for any type of review or anything. This is just a pivot from a residential use operating under a special use permit to the office and institutional non-residential use as a permitted use. The one thing that does garner them, as was mentioned, is as a special use in a residential zoning district, it is considered a little bit higher intensity than a generic residential use. And so some of the accessory uses like a daycare and school are not permitted. They will be permitted or would be permitted if proposed under the O&I zoning district. But again, at this time, nothing is proposed. This was just a pivot. The reason it is town initiated is this was part of a settlement agreement that the town would initiate the zoning petition. From that point on, after the initiation of this request, it then follows the standard and legal procedures, which include this public hearing and the public hearing with the town board.
Okay, so as part of the settlement, the initiation from the town was just to initiate it, not necessarily that it would go through, it's just that it initiates the process.
Yes.
Okay. is this currently in the town limits, or is this just in the ETJ?
So this is an ETJ property, it is not annexed, so they are not on public water or sewer, they have a well and septic field that is permitted through Wake County.
Okay, so if they were to actually bring this in as part of the rezoning, then submit plans to expand the church, are they required to connect any town utilities?
No.
So they can continue, if we would let this rezoning go through, they can basically have our zoning, but they're not really bound by some of the noise ordinance and things like that, or are they still bound by the noise ordinance that
So
we
the
have?
noise ordinance would fall under Wake County Sheriff.
So, okay. And y'all step in if you have any questions beyond mine. I'm just jotting down some things and trying to wrap my head around this one. Why is it this is not a conditional rezoning as opposed to a standard rezoning? They didn't want to offer up any conditions, or is it just this is the starting point for initiating the rezoning?
As the petitioner, we were not in position, because we're not the property owner, to add conditions.
Right. I feel like this needs to be a conditional rezoning.
I'll ask a question too. Can you talk about the transportation? I know a lot of the people in the public hearing were talking about the conditions of the road. I know in our brief, there's stuff about the updating of the road down, like in the, what is it, the 2035 transportation plan. Can you just discuss what are the future plans with Wagstaff as far as like, that would impact this property, maybe adjacent properties?
Right. I would ask if Matt can, Matt Pulling, our
Sorry,
engineering
sorry to put
director,
you on
is
the
here, if he
spot.
can address anything with that. It is an NCDOT road.
Correct. It is an NCDOT road. So, I mean, any kind of maintenance or repairs would fall under their maintenance division.
Gotcha.
I believe it's a 70-foot right-of-way, 2-lane sidewalks on both sides, nothing special.
No, this is, excuse me, hey, we're not gonna holler out from the, he's talking about the future plan, not the current one. We got you, Matt.
Yep.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yep. Any
More
questions
for
with
Matt?
regards to what the future plans are?
What was that? Sorry.
Any questions with regards to what the future plans are?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know I've traveled down Wagstaff before, and it's not, you know, it is to their point, kind of. you
It's a
know,
mess.
It's a mess, and then
Yeah.
looking at development and everything, just, you know, I know that's part of, it was addressed in the 2035 community transportation plan, but we're kind of at the behest of DOT as far as, but I didn't know if y'all have any special insight into what that looks like, if it is on the radar of DOT.
It's not on any current repaving plans. I will say that for Holland Road was a mess for a very long time. And we directed a lot of our citizens to NCDOT's website, where you can actually make those official complaints with regards to the condition of the roads. And over time, those complaints were heard, and they ended up resurfacing Holland. And so I would recommend that anybody who has any problems or they want their complaint registered with DOT to go to DOT's website, register that complaint, and eventually it will be heard. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Any other more questions or thoughts?
I have one. I mean, just looking at this, I mean, it is a residential area, and this is not necessarily adding to the residential character of the neighborhoods in that area. Oftentimes we see something like this kind of in a more appropriate location. You know, maybe it's a corner, or maybe it's you know, where it moves into some different types of activities. But this one is literally, the farther you go out, it's literally smack dab in the middle of a bunch of residential areas, without offering the community, whether that's Fuquay-Varina or just this local area, it doesn't seem to be offering them kind of anything additional to their quality of life.
Right.
As a result of this. As a matter of fact, I believe as a town, we would open ourselves up to them being able to, if we go through this, that there's, you know, there is an advantage to this special use permit process, because this is, you know, there's been a history here, but also that it clearly is something that needs to be, I guess, managed and maintained by the town processes that we have. I think kind of just throwing open the gate, I don't feel comfortable doing that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I share your, I think that the thing about it right now is that they almost get the benefits of of the town and the zoning and stuff, but they don't necessarily have to abide by the rules within the town, feels a little
Right.
bit. So
I
it almost
mean,
feels
if
like we
it-
need to
yeah.
stay as a special use permit and have some control, or it needs to be a rezoning that has some
And if
conditions
you
that
think about it,
address
that's
some of
what,
these concerns.
that's what zoning's about. Zoning is about us as a community coming together and trying to logically parcel things out so that everyone gets the benefit of, you know, benefit of their own property use, but also benefit of being part of a community. And that just, this from a zoning perspective, just from, and, you know, we are the planning and zoning board, from a zoning perspective, it just doesn't make any sense. And I think even the fact that we had the special use permit sounds like we were sort of grandfathered in. It just kind of like, that was the way we had addressed it at the time. But I think that might have been the right way to address it, because I don't think changing to O&I is going to actually help our community or help the local area there either.
And I mean, I think to the benefit of the land use plan, the reason why it is civic space is because it's already an existing church, so you
Well,
have to
right.
give them an avenue to be able to rezone. But having a rezoning with some sort of conditions that addresses some of these concerns seems like we're not really protecting our neighbors.
Right.
And maybe the special use permit, if they don't want to rezone with conditions, maybe the route to keep them in. We don't see too many just straight rezonings anymore these days, and largely because there's got to be some sort of condition in there to, something, you know, if you're backing up the road, then, you know, you fix that problem with your conditions, when you come in with that site plan or something. So I would agree with you. That's kind of how I'm feeling as well.
Are you able to just expand on why the town is the petitioner and were the property owners involved at all in the process?
So again, this is part of a settlement
Okay.
agreement. I don't know if James can.
Yeah, kind of the short version on this was there was an issue with the alignment of the parkway. We got sued by the church, and as part of the resolution, we realigned it along the old alignment route, and they wanted us to bring forth a petition as the town to rezone O&I, so they would have a use as a right versus having to go to special use permit in the future.
But the extent of that settlement is just to bring the petition before the board.
The board's independent. We can't contract,
Yeah,
we can't contract with zoning,
They
obviously.
I'm just saying, like, it was the settlement was to bring for a straight rezoning with no conditions, just a, that was.
And, you know, there's an option to the board, if we wanted to table it, we could go back and talk to them and see if they wanted to offer up some conditions. They did, that was mention of that in the agreement, you know, that they would if the
I
board.
actually like that idea because we're not in a hurry. I mean, I'm sorry, usually we're trying to move things along here, but I do not see anything that screams urgency on this. Is it?
I mean, I would say it's not
We're
urgent
missing
petition
something.
if the owner's not even here.
If we do table it, does that also table it for the town board?
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
just making sure.
Yeah, and that gives it gives us a chance to kind of ask staff to go back and work on some, potentially some conditions, or have some, you know, some other resolution, because.
Yeah.
I would just say, I wouldn't be as entertained to table something if the property owner isn't even here to speak on behalf of what they're
I think that's fair. I think
trying to accomplish here.
I think that's fair. I mean, look, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of us tabling things on this board. We do occasionally, and it is an avenue, but I guess, so if we were to table it, staff, do you guys even have an avenue to create conditions? That has to come from the property owner, correct?
That's correct. We'd have to coordinate with property owners.
Yeah, so like, it seems like to me, and I don't know the whole history behind this, there seems like there's a lot of history behind this, but it sounds like to me that they're not gonna be, they're trying to, it almost feels like they're trying to pull one on us, is what it almost feels like. A little bit. So I'm not sure they're gonna be like overly, you know, enthusiastic about creating conditions that are gonna satisfy the concerns we as a board have.
Well, the reality is if we decline to approve this, recommend non-approval of this zoning change, it goes to the board agrees with us and decides not to do the zoning change, then it is back in the church's hands as far as I can tell.
So, I mean, that's kind of
That's
where I'm
when they
at
come
too.
back with
And then
conditions.
the town has met its obligation, and then the town, that the
Yeah.
church would have to come back with their own conditions, and
Is there a time?
they would have to hear those neighborhood meetings.
What?
I said there was a time frame.
There's not an exact time frame. We brought the petitions. I think we're in compliance there.
Yeah, you've
And
If we table it, it's not gonna matter.
I guess-
If you vote it down, it's not gonna matter.
I guess let me ask this question too, because typically if we deny something, or if the town board denies a rezoning request, they generally have to wait a year until they can come up with something unless it's substantially different, correct? So would coming in with a conditional rezoning qualify that to be substantially different so that they could come in?
I think you would.
I would lean more towards the denial stage than the table stage, just from the standpoint is it takes it out of the town's hands of playing middleman.
Yeah.
And the church would have to come in with their own conditions, and they would have to hold their neighborhood meeting and have their discussions. But that's just my opinion.
I agree.
I actually kind of like that idea.
Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would say, we're up for a motion, if anybody wants to make one of those motions.
I recommend we disapprove REZ, make sure I'm in the right one. Yes, REZ 20, yeah, there we go. Recommend disapproval, REZ 2024-06, a zoning map amendment for 1,000 Wagstaff Road from the residential agricultural RA zoning district to the office and institutional zoning district, as it is unreasonable and not in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by the board.
Second.
Well, that was a quick second. All right, before we take the vote, is there any more discussion or questions for staff, for our town attorney? Everybody understands what we're voting on? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. All right, we'll move on to item 4B, zoning map amendment, REZ 2023-14, 466 Conover Street. Further information provided by staff.
All right, thank you again, Mr. Chair. I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. The second item before you tonight is REZ 2023-14, a rezoning proposed by Ray Mullins of Building Beyond LLC PA at 466 Conover Street, PIN number 0656791714. It is a total of 0.33 acres from the RMD Residential Medium Density Zoning District to the TCR Town Center Residential Zoning District. This rezoning is consistent with the 2040 land use plan. Staff's recommendation tonight is as follows. Staff recommends approval of the proposed zoning map amendment as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the following reasons. Number one, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2040 land use plan designation of town center residential. Number two, the requested zoning district is complementary to the residential uses in the general vicinity. And number three, the requested zoning district supports infill development and reinvestment in downtown neighborhoods per the 2040 LUP's policy 2.1, encourage infill development and redevelopment inside town limits. I am available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for staff? All right. This time we'll open up the public hearing. Eva, do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, Chair. Mary Elizabeth Smith, if you'll please approach the podium.
And please remember your name, address, and for or against, so we know where you're sitting.
I'm Mary Elizabeth Smith, 1143 Executive Circle, Cary, and I'm for this. I am the contact person on the application / land surveyor, and so I'm for this proposal. And I also just wanted you guys to know I was here if there were questions. So thank you guys for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks.
That is all we have.
That's all we have?
Yes.
Okay. Give everybody else one more opportunity. Please see Eva. Seeing no one get up, we will close you can, if you're wanting to get up, you'll have to sign up with our clerk and state your name and address. Real quick question on that. And again, please keep in mind, you asking questions, we may not be able to answer your question. Okay.
It's just something I want to bring up.
Emily Holloway, 312 Andrew Road. Just a quick question in regards to the Tree City USA for Fuquay. I know that that's a wooded lot, and would the town be involved in requiring the developer to save a certain amount of trees? I know when it's an individual property, we don't really have any say in that, but on a commercial development, does the Tree City USA have any kind of input to save some of the trees on that lot as the construction proceeds? That's my comment.
Okay, well, we appreciate that.
That's all we have.
All right. No more chances. I'm gonna close this one now. We get sneaky ones in. All right, we'll close public hearing, bring it back to the board. I do think it's a fair question. I think we could speak to that as far as trees and heritage trees and how that
Right.
works in a situation like this.
So these lots are pre-existing. They were platted a very, very long time ago. So this is just basically individual building permits. This is not a commercial development, so it does not fall under the heritage tree requirements.
And we don't have really any teeth to do that with. Sir, I'm sorry, I've closed the public hearing. I can't have you speak anymore. I'm sorry.
That is something that obviously we saw just last month was actually conditioned that there were existing trees.
Right.
So that is something that obviously if it had come up in the neighborhood meeting, the petitioner could have volunteered it.
Right.
But we do not have identified trees on this plot plan, and that has not been a condition that was brought forward.
See, so there's conditions coming back.
So a question on that, so we've had the subdivision of this lot that we're rezoning?
So these are already technically 4 lots. They were created as 4 lots back
This is part of the,
1945.
so this is part of that whole thing where they could build 2 lots on 1 lot and.
It is, but building a townhouse is not something permissible in the current RMD zoning district. So basically,
Right,
by
right.
rezoning to TCR, so again, they could, by right, build a lot of record. They could build 4 individual, single-family detached lots
Right.
on these 4 25-foot wide lots, or they can rezone it to TCR and using the current standards, develop townhomes using the TCR standards, but they are not doing any form of subdivision.
Right, since the lots have already been subdivided, they're not doing any subdivision at all.
Yes.
And also, okay, that's what I was trying to understand, whether the subdivision had been done prior to this zoning. So-
Right, long time ago. And they do have a condition, they will be planting 1 ornamental tree in the front yard of each lot. That is one of their conditions.
So really what we have before us is that they could build 4 houses on these 4 lots with have no zoning conditions and no standards whatsoever, or we can let them build 4 townhomes and adhere them to the standards they've offered us.
Yes.
Okay, everybody understand that, and how that works?
I guess the question I had is, now, each of these townhomes are, it's listed as, each of them are 2-unit townhomes, is that? Do I
No.
understand?
There's 2 townhomes on 4 lots.
2 townhomes. Oh, okay, so
So it's a pair.
that's a pair of townhomes on each.
Right.
You just normally see townhomes in 3s.
Right, 3 or 4 or more, right?
So again, technically, many people would look at this and call it a duplex, but the difference being is a duplex is on 1 lot. This is
actually
2 lots.
This is actually, and they're 2 individual, yeah.
So it's 2 pairs of townhomes.
Yeah, I was trying to get the math to work on.
This is the thing where it doesn't necessarily show up as the 4 lots, but it is 4 lots with,
Because it was owned by the same ownership. Wake County maps it as 1 lot, but technically it is still deeded as 4 separate lots.
that's it.
4 separate lots, and then there's gonna be a townhome on each one, and then they'll be paired up.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if nobody has any questions, I'll make a motion.
Anybody have any more questions for staff before we hear a motion? I think we're good to go.
I move to recommend approval of REZ 2023-14, a zoning map amendment at 466 Conover Street from the residential medium density RMD zoning district to the town center residential TCR zoning district as is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by staff.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any questions before we vote? Everybody understands what we're voting. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, right along. We will move on to item 4C, zoning map amendment REZ 2024-05, 317 East Vance Street. Further information provided by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am submitting the agenda abstract and supporting documents into the official record of the town. The third public hearing before you tonight is REZ 2024-05. It's a rezoning proposed by Wayne Malden of Malden Walk-in Surveying, PA, at 317 East Van Street, PIN number 06660688894. A total of 0.661 acres from the residential medium density zoning district to the town center residential zoning district. This rezoning request is consistent with the 2040 land use plan. Staff's recommendation is as follows. Staff recommends approval of the proposed zoning map amendment as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the following reasons. Number 1, the requested zoning map amendment is consistent with the 2040 Community Vision Land Use Plan for the designation of town center residential. Number 2, the requested zoning district is complementary to the residential uses in the general vicinity. Number 3, the requested zoning district supports infill development and reinvestment in downtown neighborhoods per the 2040 LUP's Policy 2.1, encourage infill development and redevelopment inside town limits. And number 4, the requested zoning district supports the creation of a variety of housing types per the 2040 LUP's Policy 8.1, provide mixed housing and diversity. I am happy to answer any questions.
So listen, anybody have any questions for staff? No? All right. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing. Eva, do we have anybody listed to speak?
Yes, Chair, we do. We'll go with Wayne Malden as the petitioner.
Good evening, Chair, board members. I'm Wayne Malden with Malden Watkins Surveying here at 139 North Main Street here in Fuquay. We put this petition together for Ms. O'Dowd that you have in front of you tonight. This lot was a single-family lot. There was a rental house on here that the termites had destroyed. She has got the permit and the house has been removed. What we're doing now, or asking for tonight, is a TCR approval to do the 2 duplexes, as you can see on our map. We did have a neighborhood meeting, and I know some of them are here tonight. Their main concerns were flooding of the road in this area. Apparently there is a considerable amount of road flooding when a hard rain comes through. I pointed out that this lot was not really the cause of the flooding, that it was upstream. I also give, I believe it was Miss Jones, yes, Miss Jones, a number and a name out here at the town hall to call to see if she could get some help. And to be honest with you, I told her if that didn't do, to start emailing all the commissioners. And she did that once a week, she'd get some help. One of the other concerns was property values in the neighborhood. I am not aware of any townhomes or townhouses that have lowered anybody's property values. As we all know, with the new construction, the cost of new construction today, I can only see it raising the property values in that area. Their other concern was a townhouse in their residential neighborhood. I don't think there's any in that immediate neighborhood at this time, but as you have heard staff, the TCR does allow for it, and that's what we are proposing to do, at least on one lot. If you look on lot 2, we're real close to the creek. I doubt we get permission to build a second one as a duplex that close to the creek. It will probably end up being 1 if she builds that one. It is there on this plan and being asked to be approved just in case it can happen. In our dealings with the staff, we felt like at the end, it was better to ask for everything. And as you all know, the rules have been changed a little bit where there can be minor adjustments at a later date without having to come back to the board. So if any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
All right. Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right, Eva, who's our next guest?
Okay, we have Brian Jones.
Good evening. Brian Jones, 937 Glen Macy Drive, Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina, 27526. I am the son of Ann Jones, who is the property to the right of this, where you see Ann Motley Jones on the property here. So I'm also an architect, and please don't hold that against me. I have worked on several projects here in town, including TCR in downtown. A few things I want to say first about TCR. Based on I've been working as an architect for 26 years with different developers, different owners. Development for commercial and residential is very tricky, and TCR is a very special zoning, and it needs to be protected. The way that towns thrive is by taking one property at a time adjacent to successful downtowns and trying to expand that out from the center out. When you jump and you start going to different spots and places, all you're doing is diluting either the commercial or the residential, if you're bringing a different use within an area which it doesn't exist. In this case, we're talking about residential, and if I were to go to one of these new apartment complexes that have been built along Judd Parkway and convince the developer to sell me one of the buildings, tear it down, and propose to you to build a single-family home in the middle of that apartment complex, you would think I would be crazy. Similar here is you want to strengthen the single-family zones that are in Fuquay, because that's the backbone of Fuquay. That's what has made Fuquay to be successful. And it's generational, where people come in from different families. You have multiple ages, you have all kinds of things, and so you want to protect these single-family neighborhoods and continue to develop those as single-family neighborhoods while you go on the periphery with these types of residential developments that are apartments or multifamily, in order to provide the sustainability you need for commercial development that goes there. Specific to this project, we do have a very serious issue with flooding. The reason is 160 acres of Fuquay goes through this creek. 160 acres of downtown that has developed over the last 30 years since I lived there. When I lived there, 2-inch rains would go outside the banks and over the street. Now, a 2-inch rain comes within 15 feet of the house which my mom lives in. And when you have a 4-inch rain, it has come within 6 feet. Similar to any common sense, when you put a rock in a stream, and when I used to play in this creek, you put a rock in a stream, the water has to go somewhere. If you put that big of a rock in the stream, it's going to force water onto that property even more, and most likely could cause damage to her house. So in the current zoning, RMD allows for a duplex and allows for it to be built in the same place where the original house was. The reason it was termite infested is because it received all the same floodwaters from that creek up to where the house was, which is on the left-hand side of this property. So I don't understand the need for us to rezone it to have two things on there when one will do just fine. The other thing is there's a sewer capacity issue on this street that needs to be looked into. I would ask that you'd have a sewer capacity study and a water study done prior to making a decision, because I know that this board would not want to put anyone in harm's way with decisions that you might make. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with that you're against.
I'm against.
Fair enough. All right, Eva.
Ann Jones.
Okay, I'm Ann Jones, Brian's mom that he was just talking about. I live at 403 East Fence Street here in Fuquay. My family has owned this property for over 60 years, so it's real special to our family. As long as I've lived there on East Fence, all the way from Andrew Road to England Avenue, it's always been single family. People move to that neighborhood for bigger lots, for homes with character that are older, and I'm really concerned with this project, what it would do to the character of our neighborhood. But more important than that, I'm concerned about the flooding. When I talked to the town about this, I was just almost passed out when they told me 160 acres of land in this town, the flood water from there flows into the creek and goes through the 2 pipes in front of my home. So over the years, we've been used to some flooding with hurricanes and thunderstorms. I have azaleas planted along my side of the creek, and sometimes if it got really bad, it would come on my side of those azaleas. But the last 3 or 4 years, water now comes out of the creek midway on this map would be lot 2, where the creek runs around the edge of that. It comes out of there and comes straight from my house, which is really frightening to see. I think it's because of the additional building uptown, not as many soils for the water to soak into. And we had a 4-inch rain last year in an hour, and it came within 6 feet of my house. There was 40 foot of water from the front of my house to the other side of the street. I can only see about this much of the azaleas, out front. So if you put 2 buildings and 8 parking places just up the hill from me, where we used to have just one small home, look at all the flood hazard soils that are gone. And those are in this area, and I don't understand if the town even did a study of what it's going to do to those soils. We've also, over the years, had problems with sewage because of the creek. My sewage line goes uphill, And what is gonna happen, and that town has told me, they've been so nice, if I have a problem, call them first, and they do come in a few minutes. And if 9 times out of 10, it's been the town's problem. What's gonna happen now with 4 families added to this sewage line, which already doesn't work well? So that is my concern of it, the water, if it doesn't go inside of my house, flooding in underneath my house. I've checked with my homeowner's insurance, they do not cover flooding. If I was to get flooding coverage, that's $1,100 more a year that I would have to pay for that. I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income, and that would be a very big hardship. But I can't afford to lose my home, it's all that I have. I appreciate your consideration of it.
Thank you.
We have Stephen Eisenberg. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I'm Stephen Eisenberg. I live at 318 East Vance Street, directly across the street. I am against this. I was the contractor who tore down the old house that was there. It was termite infested, and there was significant foundation damage due to water, mostly from groundwater seeping into the foundation and then out, going towards the creek. My really biggest problem with all of this will be the parking across the street. Making sure that there's accessible parking there and not flooding the entire street with cars, because those spots are not big enough to be able to back a car in and out successfully, especially with the car sizes as they are only growing and not getting smaller. Secondly, when I was approached to build these, duplexes. I was only approached to price out 1. I never knew that there was going to be 2. And so when I found out there was going to be 2, I was like, I guess I'm going to a planning meeting for the first time. So I am against. Thank you for your time. Thank you for consideration.
We have Emily Holloway.
Emily Holloway, 312 Andrew Road. I live up at the top of Vance Street, and I walk by this property all the time with my dogs and just for exercise. It's a very, people walk this street a lot, just like they walk Raleigh Street to get down for exercise. I would say that my biggest complaint, first of all, is definitely 2 duplexes. No, there's not room for them. This is a single-family neighborhood. There are a lot of rentals now in this property. And I understand that duplexes are not townhomes, duplexes are for rent. So there will be more rent rather than a single-family home or townhomes, which could be purchased. But again, I'm agreeing with what they're saying about the groundwater, because my backyard on Andrew Road will flood from the fire department. It floods all the way halfway up my yard. So I know that the water tables are high, and with the creek, that it's just that land is not appropriate for 2 buildings. I'm really not thrilled about 1. I can understand that you probably might approve 1 duplex, which will be rental. Will it be affordable housing? Will it be in a neighborhood? This is a not a wealthy neighborhood until they put those houses up there on the corner of Raleigh and Ennis, but it's still a fairly affordable neighborhood, and I would hope that the duplexes would be affordable for people that would want to move in there. So that's a consideration too, but I'm against it. I'd like to see a single-family home go, not a mega mansion, but something that would fit appropriately. If they do decide to build the duplexes, please just build 1, not 2. The flooding is an issue. Groundwater, the creek, it's all there, and the parking would be an issue. That'd be like maybe 8 cars, 6 cars, 8 more people. It's too dense for that property. So again, and there are a lot of trees still. I'd like to keep those trees if we can. So thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you.
We have Rich Connors. Rich. Okay.
Eva, let's just skip him, and then we'll come back and do one more final call at the end.
Okay, and the next one is, I can't see with my glasses. I'm so sorry. I have my computer.
Looks like last name Green.
Jill Green. Sorry.
Good evening. I'm Jill Green. I live at 308 Church Street. I used to live at 320 East Vance, right directly across the street from this house or this proposal. I am against this. for every reason that's already been spoken, so I won't reiterate anything anyone else has already said and delay your time, but just sitting out on my front porch and looking at the beauty of the trees and everything that existed there when I lived there was very peaceful. It was a very beautiful, very charming neighborhood, and to put 2 townhomes with 8 cars across the street will just absolutely ruin the charm of that little area. Like they've said, this is a single family home area, and it is quite charming, it is quite beautiful, and that's why people want to live in Fuquay, because it is charming. That's what people tell me all the time, coming from Iowa, Ohio, Indiana, everywhere that they're coming from. They say it's just so charming here. And when we start throwing up, you know, townhouses everywhere, we lose the charm. We lose the trees, lose the beauty of Fuquay-Varina as we know it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Allison Bonar?
Hi, I'm Allison Bonar, 308 England Avenue. I am against this. There seems to be a theme in our neighborhood to take one house, tear it down, and build 4, and that's how it feels. I don't understand. It is a very small property when you consider the creek and the flooding. I don't know how we're possibly putting 2 duplexes on here. It was a single-family home. It should stay a single-family home. I agree this street does not have a sidewalk. We walk our dog every single day down this street. If all these cars are now on the street, it's gonna make it less safe. It's a nice neighborhood. The kids ride their bikes, they play basketball, they do all the things. All these cars are gonna stop that. I really don't understand why we're continuing to try to put 2 houses, build vertical, in a very old neighborhood with small little houses. That's why we bought that. So I agree with the flooding. That street, come drive down when it's rained. You can't. You have to detour. So that is a huge issue as well, but everybody else has said that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're circling back to Rich Connors.
Going once, twice. All right, I'm going to assume he left.
Okay.
Nobody else on the list?
That's all we have.
All right. This time we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion, questions, comments, concerns, motions. I think there's a couple things we probably need to get clarified right off the bat. One is that duplexes are not guaranteed for rent, and even if they were, this board cannot base any decisions based off of things being for rent or for sale. That's against state law. So we can't take that into consideration. Pam, this property's already RMD, correct?
It's currently RMD.
It's
yes.
currently RMD. Can they do duplexes on RMD?
Yes.
So what stops them from right now is being rezoned RMD, subdividing this into 2 10,000 square foot lots and doing 2 duplexes as it stands?
The only thing that would stop it is potentially that it just pushes it a hair over the allowed zone or the density. I believe that the RMD, the top density is 6 dwelling units per acre, and that would put it at 6.16.
Okay.
So technically today, they could subdivide it into 2 10,000 square foot lots. They could put a duplex on one and a single family on the other without any rezonings. Now, obviously, TCR tightens up your setbacks, and so it provides the opportunity to work around those environmental features and the existing sewer lines and things like that that would be more difficult to do if you just drew a straight line down this.
Got it. Okay. I think it would be helpful if the staff could talk through the flooding concerns and just what's being going on and what information we have. I think that's
We're gonna go back to Matt.
We're gonna go
so we
back
got
to
him
Matt, put him on the
handy.
spot. He kind of knew it was coming. It's all right.
I will say that anything that goes on this property is going to have an engineer do a flood study. And when a flood study is conducted, the finished floor elevation of any habitable structure has to be 2 feet above that 100-year flood elevation. Does that make sense? So anytime there's an encroachment into flood hazard soils by a habitable structure, an engineer has to do a flood study. They'll determine what that 100-year water surface elevation is. And then from that determination, they add 2 feet to the finished floor elevation for that, whatever habitable structure is going to go there. Any questions with regards?
Yeah, so currently, I think the issue seems to be that the flooding has been getting worse, right? So where are these would these calculations change based on the current conditions, or would they be based on whatever the 100-year soil, the 100-year flood from?
This entire watershed is developed, and it has been developed for a very long time. Matter of fact, I would say that 90% of this watershed has probably been developed before the town even had a stormwater ordinance. So this small piece of this watershed is not going to contribute to any additional flooding with regards to the concerns here.
It was more about, the question was, how would it affect you? So it doesn't, but it's, so because it's already kind of in place, then it doesn't really affect your calculations to say, oh, the 100-year floodplain may have actually shifted here.
No, we're talking.
Right. Okay, so you're and I guess when we had the reference to whether this second duplex is approved or not, I'm trying to understand, is Fuquay-Varina Engineering the ones that going to be able to state whether that works or not? I mean,
the developer will hire an engineer.
Their engineer.
And then we will review it for.
We'll review it. So basically, if the engineers say that it meets that 2 foot above 100-year flood, then it gets the blessing. If it says, oh, it's, it's a 1.5 feet, so that's just not going to work, then.
Yeah, they'll put their seal on it, and we'll review it to make sure it's complete and accurate, and then, yes.
Okay. And then because of this, we don't have any special requirements for stormwater other than kind of the standard there's no stormwater management that has new stormwater management that would have to be in place here.
Not with this
development. Because there's not that a big enough change for them to be required to actually like put in mitigations or anything like that. It's small.
So stormwater is required when you disturb more than an acre. So anytime you have more than an acre of disturbance, you have to have your stormwater ponds installed.
Thank you.
Yeah, just doing the math. It's 160 acres, right? That's been stated. Just want to make sure that the board doesn't base their decisions off 160 acres from.
I will say
public. I don't know if like you guys have looked at it yet.
No, I mean, I haven't personally done it, but the drainage area goes all the way back up to Main Street and close to Wake Chapel, all the way over to Ennis is what it looks like. So it's a pretty big drainage area.
Yeah, pretty wide.
And it's developed with no stormwater measures because all this development predated any stormwater ordinance that the town had.
I guess this isn't really a question for this specific property, but has there been any study in this area about like growth impact on the flood in this area? I know like Andrew Road has flooding issues, Van Street has issues, but as we grow, particularly in downtown and get a little more dense in the residential, has there been any look at how that's affecting things like this creek?
So the town was just awarded about $400,000 grant, ARPA money, to do a study in the downtown areas where our stormwater infrastructure information was lacking. They're going to assess the condition of the pipes. They're going to assess the adequacy of the storm drainage system, and then they're going to come back with recommendations. So we do have it's over a $500,000 study that is underway right now that is looking at the condition of all of our stormwater infrastructure, specifically in the downtown areas.
So that'll make grants hopefully available to actually implement some of the recommendations from that study.
So there is the potential for a stormwater utility that could be implemented to potentially fund stuff like this.
Okay.
But that's
the next step.
Down 2026 is when the study, December of 26 is when it'll be completed.
Okay. Is the study going to prioritize anything? So like, is it going to go through and say, hey, this is the most critical, this is the second?
It will.
Yeah. I imagine this is going to be one of those critical.
Right, yeah. I mean, like Andrew Road was mentioned too. I mean, we've had washouts there. It's just,
And aging infrastructure.
Yeah.
The town board will have to decide, where they want to spend that.
Right.
And
in the case of stormwater, no infrastructure is what we're saying. There's no real infrastructure that was put in place specifically for stormwater management. They just did some culverts and dug the creeks dug out a little bit deeper, but there was no actual engineering plan for how the stormwater is managed in downtown Fuquay.
Also wonder, I guess it's really not for here and now, but talking about 2 duplexes as that comes up, and it's probably gonna be a high priority to mitigate some of this flooding, you know, that may behoove the petitioner to really think about what they're putting on here, because that could potentially affect what they're putting in there. It might be something where there has to be some type of taking or something to help mitigate some of that flooding that close to the creek. I would imagine it's going to impact that creek line. It may or may not. I don't know exactly what you do to mitigate stormwater in that scenario, but
There's not much. I will say that flood hazard soils are not protected. They are just simply an indication that a flood hazard or a flood study needs to be conducted to make sure that that finished floor elevation is set at the level it needs to be set. So.
It'll actually establish the line of which theoretically the flood comes up.
Mhm.
I have a question for staff. As far as, I know parking was brought up a few times. Looking at the map that's on the screen, where it says 5-foot sidewalks, so that's 4 parking spots in front of each, one going vertical, one going horizontal for those, correct?
It's 2 spaces per unit.
Okay, I was just making sure that was parking. I assumed it was, but.
Anybody have any questions for Matt? If not, we can take him off the hot seat. I think you're good, Matt.
It's never coming back to a planning board meeting again.
Yeah, I tell you where I sit on this. I don't think they'll ever build the second duplex. I just don't think they'll get there. We don't really have too many houses on stilts here. It's more of a beach thing, and I think that's probably what it would take to actually do that. So I think it is possible, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pam, they set this zoning up so that a single family could be done on this.
Mhm.
So
Right, so-
and it could be done without even really changing anything other than
Yeah.
they wouldn't have, if they did a single family on lot 2, they would need to put the parking space and they could use the driveway if it has a garage.
So, note 9 on this plat is future modifications and additions to this plat plan are permissible as long as they meet the applicable town center residential development standards. Basically, a shift to a single family, one single family unit would be acceptable as long as it met all the TCR standards and would not require. So like Wayne referenced, they're kind of showing, I don't want to say worst case, but most intensive. And any step, if they wanted to do 2 single-family homes on this, as long as they met the TCR standards, I think that would be acceptable.
So I think that point is, a vote today isn't necessarily, it's just a zoning that allows them to do stuff like this, but it's not approving 2 duplexes. It could be 1 duplex, or it could be single-family home.
Mhm.
And that, you know, the process after this, if it were to be approved, would be for petitioner to get studies done, like engineering study, flood study, present it to the planning board, which should then get reviewed by engineering and then approved by.
So nothing else would come. So TCR zoning requires a plot plan or a master plan. From that on, once this minor subdivision took place, it would just be all done through the building permit process.
Yeah, but it
So there
doesn't
would be
come-
nothing else submitted to planning board or
Yeah,
town
but it
board.
would go through, there's a process after today,
We wouldn't see
before
it.
something is built that is seen and approved by town staff.
Right.
Before they would be allowed to move forward.
I would just say, I don't know that this is something we can take into consideration. I think this is more so for the landowner themselves, but, you know, I understand that the TCR zoning allows this project, but I think the question is it responsible? And I don't know that we can vote on that question, but I do think it's something that the landowner should at least consider. And listen to the community on, just because I again, the zoning allows it, zoning allows a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's responsible. But again, I don't think that's something we can vote by.
And that might be something more for the town board to consider when it goes before them, where they've got a little more latitude in where they're voting.
People start to get into a real squirrely area there.
So I think there's 2 things to differentiate here, whether you're speaking of character, I mean, that is something that you can speak to, is the TCR zoning and what's being proposed fit the character. As far as responsible, if you're talking about meeting and protecting the environmental, I mean, luckily there are state rules and local, standards and things like that that are going to protect the environmental features and the stormwater that Matt has spoken of today. So I think in that sense, that falls onto the fact that they would have to, anything that was submitted, they'd have to get a building permit to demonstrate that they met those state and federal standards.
I think here's the other thing you have to consider is that this is already RMD. So they could build a duplex regardless. I mean, so the character thing not necessarily goes out the window, but to your point, you could make that decision, but they could build it today if they wanted to. There's nothing we could do to stop them. And technically, they could subdivide this into 2 10,000 square foot lots and probably do a duplex and a single family, which I think is probably what they're gonna wind up with anyways. The benefit to the TRC is at least we get some sort of standards and conditions for some quality of the construction. I mean, as it stands right now, they're use by right with the duplex.
Yep.
So we fall into that sometimes too, and sometimes that contributes to the quality and the character too. So yeah, you could get a single family home, but if it is not really the materials that meets the area, then that's not really quality either. And so denying a rezoning for a duplex that they could do anyways doesn't really, I mean, from my point of view, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense there.
And lose those conditions.
And lose the conditions, right? I mean, we run into that sometimes too, where it's just, you gotta look at it as, it's a use by right now. So at least this way we get some sort of conditions and some sort of aesthetics with the construction. And none of that changes whether they're RMD or TCR. It doesn't change the studies they have to go through from a flooding perspective or the utilities or any of that stuff. None of that stuff changes.
Right.
So I think we have to ask ourselves on a board, does not approving the rezoning, is it worth that and not get the conditions and the characters that come with those conditions? Personally, I don't think it does, but that's just, again, where I sit.
I also think it's like many other things when we get complaints about traffic or that from a strictly zoning perspective, we can only do so much here. But we can inform people of what the systems and processes that are in place for.
Right.
That's why I was glad we had, discussion on the stormwater stuff.
Right, and you certainly can't ask a 0.66 acre development to solve a problem that's been in existence for 45 years, 50 years in this town. So it's good that we have studies in place to identify these issues, but I mean, we can't ask a single development to solve all of the problems. So I guess with that, we can keep talking about it. We can make a motion. We can ask more questions. Anybody ready to make a motion?
Oh, come on, somebody's got
I'll make the motion. I recommend approval of REZ 2024-05, a zoning map amendment at 317 East Vance Street from residential medium density zoning district to the town center residential TCR zoning district, as it is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by staff.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion before we vote? That's not the interest I need. Any more discussion here? Everybody knows what we're voting on. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. All right, move on to item 4D, zoning map amendment, CTA 2024-02, amendment number 27. Further information provided by staff.
Good evening.
More this meeting than we've seen in 6 months.
I know. So the town staff would like to submit this agenda abstract and the supporting documents into the official record of the town. The purpose of this agenda item is to consider a proposed text amendment to the Town Code of Ordinances, Part 9, Land Development Ordinance, Amendment number 27, that adopts and implements the new stormwater rules. So in April of 2020, the town was added to the new stormwater rules adopted by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Environmental Management Commission. One of the requirements for the newly added local governments is the development of a local program to implement the new rules by July 1st of 2024. Our current stormwater standards in the LDO apply only to the town's corporate limits. The new stormwater rules will include a modification and expansion of stormwater requirements into the ETJ. The most significant LDO revisions to the development standards will include the nutrient loading requirements and runoff volume matching for development, lower disturbance thresholds for commercial development, expansion of the post-construction stormwater program into the ETJ, and also the expansion of the IDDE program and the public education and outreach programs into the ETJ. And the recommended motion tonight is to Recommend approval of CTA 2024-02 Amendment Number 27, an amendment to the Town Code of Ordinances, Part 9, Land Development Ordinance, as presented and recommended by staff. The text amendment improves upon the Land Development Ordinance and is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by staff. And with that, I'd like to, I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions from Matt right at the moment? I have one. If it's got to be implemented by July 1st, 2024, how does that impact like current projects coming through? It's like, what phase do you have to start implementing that? Like projects that go through, what phase does that become?
Sure, I would say that they are already grandfathered in. Anything that's submitted after the July 1st would be subject to those rules.
So,
Yeah, the state statute hits permit choices on submittal. So it's when you submit the first time, site plan, preliminary plan, you trigger that permit choice, that you have then the choice to either follow the standards that were in place upon your first submittal or follow the new standards.
Gotcha. So that's actually in place no matter whether town board approves it, because they approve it after July 1st. It goes to town board after July 1st, or is it going to town?
June 3rd.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were in June. I'm
Yeah.
carrying too fast. Got you. It makes more sense then. I was looking at it today like, how is this going to work? That makes more sense. Fair enough. All right. Thanks, Matt. Anybody got any questions that are intelligent? I like monkey. All right. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Eva, do we have anybody signed up?
We do not.
Okay. Anybody else wish to sign up? Not a popular. All right. I guess we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
There's no questions, I'll make a motion.
Okay, any questions? If not, we'll entertain this motion.
Move to recommend approval of CTA 2024-02 Amendment Number 27, an amendment to the Town Code of Ordinance, Part 9, Land Development Ordinance, as presented and recommended by staff. The text amendment improves upon the Land Development Ordinance and is reasonable and in the best interest of the public for the reasons identified by staff.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Questions? Everybody knows what we're voting on? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are done with public hearings. Moving on to other business, item 5A, 2035 Wake Transit Plan Update. Further information provided by staff.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. We just have a quick update for y'all tonight. The 2035 Wake Transit Plan Update has begun with CAMPO, the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, as the lead agency. This update focuses on a region-wide community transit needs and priorities. Up to $1 billion is forecasted to be spent over the next 10 years. So CAMPO, the partner municipalities are really looking forward to some public input on how that's going to be spent efficiently and equitably. CAMPO has tasked each of the partner municipalities with spreading the word, getting feedback in. They have a survey that is open now on the project webpage. That's www.publicinput.com/WakeTransit2035. We'll be taking it to a couple different events. They'll be at a couple of different events. So just trying to get the word out, trying to get some public feedback on how money will be spent towards our transit future. So that'd be bus lines, railways, things like that. So it's an important project. It's a big project. It's 10 years. So if you have a few minutes, this is also open to the public. So if anybody in the public is interested in giving us some feedback on that, we'd love to have it.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions on that? Awesome. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 6A, administrative reports. The planning staff report. The purpose of this agenda item is to receive information on the disposition of the planning board's recommendation to the town board of commissioners since the April 15th, 2024 planning board meeting. Looked like we were batting 1,000 on that one.
1,000, that's exactly my thought.
Yeah, the only thing I would say in this one, I think, we talked about in one of the other planning board meetings, like if we had some of these votes like we've had tonight, which weren't unanimous, somebody showing up to the town board. I'll plan to make a note to go on that date, but I feel like it's probably good if we get a backup just in case, and given that Michelle's not here, so I don't know if we have to actually vote on that, if we can
I'm
just.
usually at all of them, so.
Can we designate somebody, do we have to vote on that?
Vote on it.
All right.
I've done all of them.
You'll be a second in command? All right, fair enough. Everybody okay with that?
Sounds
I
good.
just feel like we're not gonna vote unanimous, and somebody needs to be at town board to explain why we voted the way we
Especially
did.
the naysayer, he's the one that needs to.
Hey, he might be the better one. I mean, you could state his views and why, and I think that's important for the town board to understand why we vote the way we vote, so.
Yep.
I appreciate that, Nolan. All right. With that, Barbara, it is your time to shine.
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.